Infinite is drawing closer, and since some of the few details we know for certain about the setting and story surrounding Infinite is that it is set on Zeta Halo, it seems prudent to address a couple of more recent additions to the lore of Zeta Halo, as detailed in the recent novel Point of Light. If you have yet to read Point of Light and don't want any plot points spoiled, I suggest navigating away from this video now. You have been warned. But alas, if you're happy to go ahead, then we need to dive into some lore and theory. So come and join me. Installation 07, also known as Zeta Halo, and originally known as Gaia 11, is one of the 7 rings in the Halo array. Zeta Halo is actually the last remaining installation from the senescent array. Unlike the other 6 remaining Halo installations, which were constructed as a separate array of rings known as the Neoteric array, with a diameter of 10,000 kilometers. While the senescent array of rings had a diameter of 30,000 kilometers, 07's diameter was reduced to 10,000 kilometers after most of its superstructure was discarded as a result of heavy damage. Because of its different origin from the other 6 halos in the array, Installation 07 exhibits significant differences to the other rings, despite now being the same size. These differences are apparent in Halo's physical infrastructure and material composition, but also subtler aspects, such as the architecture and aesthetics of its structures, and technology or the machine language of its distributed computer systems. It nearly goes without saying that Zeta Halo has a long and often horrific history with Mendicant Bias, the Flood, and ancient humanity, although it would appear the significance of Zeta Halo to Mendicant Bias is much more than just sown in the history of events. A highly advanced and powerful AI capable of splintering itself into many independent instances, Mendicant Bias inhabited a number of physical forms. The primary extension of Mendicant Bias was housed in a massive facility deep beneath Installation 07's surface, accessible via anti-gravity gondolas which travelled through an enormous 20 to 30 kilometre diameter circular opening in the ring's landscape. After passing through an undetermined void within the ring's bowels, the transit vehicles settle in an enormous chamber that's floor is green and glowing, of a maze of hard light paths resembling a spider's web. Hovering above this was a city-sized mass of purple crystals, the largest of which being the size of skyscrapers. Mendicant Bias itself was based in a mobile structure featuring its core crystals and a large green eye, moving on legs of hard light. It was here that the ancient humans were eventually gathered and thoroughly examined by Mendicant Bias before the final effort to cancel the ring's fail-safe orbit, the one that caused such heavy damage to the ring, resulting in it being decreased in size from 30,000 to 10,000 kilometers. After the installation's retake by the Isodidact and Mendicant Bias's transfer away from the ring, The Primordial was detained in a chamber located near Mendicant Bias's former core. The Metarch's data crystal now dark and inert. The Primordial was imprisoned in a hemispherical chamber 531 meters in diameter within an arena 104 meters wide, locked in a cage of intermeshed black rods housing a temporal manipulation mechanism. The cage was located on a round, elevated platform in the center of the arena. This was where the Primordial was forced to experience the passage of billions of years in the matter of a few seconds at the hands of the isodidact, resulting in its complete deterioration to dust. Considering the proximity of the Primordial's time-lock prison and the crystal city of Mendicant Bias's processing core, one would assume if we can visit one in Halo Infinite, we'd be able to visit both. In both instances, I'd imagine they'd be haunting, eerie places. An unnatural stillness and quietness enveloping them both. Only the distant sounds of the ring's operating mechanisms briefly disturb the sound of silence. The Primordial's prison is a separate conversation altogether, but the crystals, however, they not only stored the multifaceted personality construct of Mendicant Bias's compound mind, but something else too. Of the massive populations of ancient humans on Zeta Halo, large swathes of them were taken to the Palace of Pain, a singular name denoting dozens of quite separate flood research facilities, and were subjected to experimentation outside of the most horrific experiences a feeble human intellect is capable of conjuring. Many of these tortured souls were left to die, but others were composed. Some were flood infected and composed. Some were completely healthy and composed. The reasons were many and varied, but these souls were ripped from their mortal forms, converted to digital machine data, and stored as essences in the crystals still laying deep below the surface of Zeta Halo. Installation 07's primary mapping facility was an enormous structure extruding from one of the edge walls. This would have been an extremely impressive cartographer to behold. However, by 2558 the cartographer was destroyed, and its functions had been transferred to the same crystalline city that Mendicant Bias once occupied, and that the essences of the tortured ancient humans likely still occupy. You have to keep in mind that these massive crystals are holding untold quantities of information. Likely thousands upon thousands of composed essences are stored within. The vast cartographer map systems of Zeta Halo is stored within, as well as the remnant hard data from Mendicant Bias's core personality array. This hard data is basically an inactive mirror of the vast data stores that once made up Mendicant's core. The idea is passingly similar to removing the CPU and the motherboard from a computer but leaving the power supply and the hard drives in place. Without the processing power and the computational processes in place to read the data on the drives, the data is basically useless. But it's still there. All currently understood processes by which information could be encoded to a crystalline material outline that even if the data on the crystalline material is read and copied off, the original copy remains, even if it is never accessed again, or even partially overwritten. With this in mind, is it even marginally possible that Mendicant in one form or another may still be in there somewhere? Perhaps not the Mendicant Bias, but a residual image of him, fragmented, heavily damaged and corrupt, but still detectable. Is there a way in which this data could be recovered? Well, there is both an issue, an opportunity, and an answer to that question. There is a species on Zeta Halo called the Tullioc. They're human-sized black creatures with bat-like wings, bioluminescent blood, black eyes, and long, almost anteater-like snouts with two tails. While they sometimes act aggressively towards unknown entities they interpret as a novel threat, they don't appear outwardly aggressive towards humans. But what do these peculiar creatures eat deep down in the bowels of Zeta Halo, nowhere close to other life forms or conventionally acceptable food sources, as the only place that these creatures have been witnessed thus far is around these large purple crystals? Well, that's just it. They've been consuming the large purple skyscraper-sized crystals within Zeta Halo that contained the composed essences and minds of thousands of individuals, as well as the processing core of Mendicant Bias. According to an attending monitor like Ancilla, who intercepted Spark and Ryan Forge during their time there, the species now literally contain the consciousnesses of thousands of composed beings, likely including fragments of Mendicant himself. Day-night cycles are now a thing in Halo Infinite, and it has been hinted on more than a few occasions that nighttime on Zeta Halo presents its own unique challenges and threats. My thoughts are, with enough influence, could this species become a hive mind, controlled by either the thousands of minds they have gradually consumed over generations of their kind, or even a kind of residual mendicant consciousness? While not appearing outwardly aggressive to Ryan and Spark, this doesn't necessarily mean that a person more instantly recognizable, shall we say, wouldn't provoke some kind of a reaction from them. My closing thoughts are this. The Tullioc are an extraordinarily interesting species. The fact they consumed and now contain the manifested hard data stored within the crystals is certainly not just a passing comment in the recent novel. Indeed, the explanation of this environment, the deep, rich history that surrounds these crystals, and the function that it now plays as the cartographer, suggests to me that this is most definitely a place we will need to visit in Halo Infinite. In Halo CE, we went looking for a map room. In Halo 3, we arrived at the Ark for the first time, and we went looking for a map room. Most Forerunner installations have map rooms, and Zeta Halo is argued by many Oni scientists to be the most mysterious Halo of them all. If we're making landfall on Zeta Halo, we're going to need to know where things are. And since Zeta's cartographer is now stored within these crystals, you can bet we're going to be making a waypoint for it. What is still to be answered is just what is going to greet us when we get there. A native species of animal? A sentient manifestation of tortured souls? Or worse, a compound hive mind species being driven by a fragmented image of Mendicant Bias? Infinite is drawing closer. But are you ready for it? Thanks for watching. Stick your comments down below, I look forward to what you have to say. Just going to shout out my patrons and YouTube members Neek the Silent Cartographer, Siphotic Storm and Todd Morrison, my Tier 0 Transcentients, Brian, Sebastian, Red Sea, Darian, Stalker of the Realms, Falcon X003, Alvin, Mr. Fell, Flaming Halo, Starlight, Legion's Lost, Josh, Kyle, the TG7, Cat Herder Cam, Schneidish, Leon, Ignizzle, Chris Spartan 118 and Cooper, the Holders of the Mantle, my Glorious Reclaimers, my Loyal Metarchs, and all the other patrons and members that have jumped aboard to support the channel. If you like Halo lore discussed to insane levels of detail, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon so you're told the second a new video hits the shelves. Be sure to support us on all major social media channels including Discord, and if you really love the channel, consider heading over to Patreon and supporting the channel over there, or jumping on as a channel member. It would mean the world to me and afford you loads of great perks and bonuses while also helping work towards some awesome stuff in the near and distant future. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.